Still in my trash if you guys want to buy a crusty ass XQC shirt. Bolsonaro's not going to pull the fraudulent election this time. Even if he loses, he actually gained political power. He can literally articulate all government spending from his couch because he turned the government budget into a subsaharan kleptocracy to buy Congress influence during COVID. It's way more complex than these lib commentators are painting it. It does seem like Bolsonaro has his grip of power within Congress far beyond what he could have done even. I mean, it would still be best if he wins, right, for him. And I think that a lot of these guys also... I don't know how much of a narcissist Bolsonaro is versus how ideologically aligned he is with like international fascism and continuing international fascism. Because like Donald Trump, I know, cares more about his own personal influence and power than he does about an ideological project for the Republican Party, which is why he'll say stuff like Mitch McConnell sucks all the time. Like, I don't know if Bolsonaro is fine with a Pyrrhic victory where he himself loses his seat of power, even if his party fucking gains. May not know, but we do. What? On the bright side, he continues to being the only really big figure on the ultra-right side. If he finally dies, everything crumbles.
15 months.
I know he's narcissistic, but like, is he as interested in his own personal success more than the ideological goals? Because some of these guys, the more dangerous guys, are the guys who care about the ideological like furthering the ideological agenda of a far-right nationalist, ultra-Christian movement, right? Donald Trump doesn't have that. He has no, like, legitimate ideological underpinning that motivates him. Like, he's not like, oh, thank God, the Republican Party is winning, or thank God we're doing shit. He just cares about, like, lowering taxes and not going to prison and having personally being in a position of power. He likes that shit. And I don't know if Bolsonaro is a grifter like Trump in that regard, or if he genuinely cares about the success of a larger project. Leaked phone call shows Marjorie Taylor Greene as a communist. That's crazy, man. Take a day off, actually. Take a day off, respectfully. Maybe you should take a month off, but, I'm just giving you a day for now. You should be excited that I only gave you a day, you fucking piece of shit. There was one other thing before we get to Ukraine. There was another thing I wanted to talk about with Brazil. Oh, here it is. Hold on.
10 months.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with Lula, I think maybe this will be decent, right? There's a Gravel Institute video on him.
Americans generally think of Brazil as a country of beaches, jungles, and Christ the Redeemer, a friendly tourist destination with fun and festivity. But Brazil isn't just a nice spot for a vacation. It's one of the most unequal countries in the world. It's also a country with one of the most successful socialist movements of our time. In 1888, Brazil abolished slavery, the last country in the Americas to do so. But even after a republic was established in 1889, elites excluded most people from voting, using their power to enrich themselves and their families. For decades, Brazil was a textbook oligarchy based on coffee with milk politics, a reference to the agrarian economies of the two most influential states. The government acted above all to protect elite interests while millions languished in poverty. As Brazil urbanized, peasants flocking to cities could see prosperity around them, but couldn't reach it. They built sprawling informal settlements called favelas, stark illustrations of the country's disparity. By the early 1960s, an alternative vision emerged, based on land redistribution and expanded democracy. Communists, peasants, workers, and students supported this reformist push. But then, fearing a communist takeover, the United States and local elites supported a military coup. From 1964 to 1985, Brazil was ruled by a brutal dictatorship that killed and tortured thousands of people. But by the late 1970s, something was changing. Workers noticed their wages were not keeping pace with the rising cost of living. It turned out they were getting paid significantly less than the regime let on. So, led by a combative, charismatic union leader named Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, commonly known as Lula, workers in the industrial heartland around São Paulo went on strike. Lula understood well the indignities of the working class. His parents were illiterate peasants who struggled to give their kids a better life. And he didn't learn to read until he was 10. When he was 18, he crushed his pinky in a workplace accident. And by the time he was seen by a doctor 4 hours later, there was no choice but to amputate the finger. Driven by these experiences, Lula and those around him realized that workers needed their own political party. So in 1980, they created the Partido dos Trabalhadores, the Workers' Party. It was the first party in Brazil created for workers by workers. The Workers' Party grew quickly, and in 2002, after 3 failed attempts, Lula was elected president. In office, Lula recognized that Brazil's fundamental problem was the grinding poverty and inequality that previous governments had mostly ignored. So in 2003, Lula's administration introduced Bolsa Família, the family stipend. Basically, the government would guarantee an income to families in extreme poverty, those earning less than $17 per person per month. And when poor families over the official poverty line were expecting a child or had a child below 18, they would get extra income too. As long as families get vaccinations and keep their kids in school, they can receive benefits indefinitely. There's no mandatory drug testing and no work requirement. With this guaranteed monthly income, poor families can meet their basic needs and afford safer living conditions. The program doesn't provide a lot by American standards. Most families receive about $38 a month. But
Did Brazil find the solution to
for
poverty?
the neediest Brazilians, it has been transformational. Compared to what other countries were doing, the scale of Bolsa Família was incredible. In the 1990s, US President Bill Clinton had implemented welfare reform. He made it more difficult to access government benefits. Promising to end welfare as we know it, he instituted work requirements and drug tests. It became so complicated and humiliating to secure government assistance that many Americans who needed support received no help at all. Extreme poverty soared. Brazil's radical experiment, meanwhile, had the exact opposite effect. Bolsa Família quickly became an international success story. For one thing, it dramatically reduced poverty. By 2015, the percentage of the population living below the international poverty line had dropped from 13% to just 3%. Bolsa Família helped lift over 40 million people out of extreme poverty. In one of the most unequal countries in the world, it has cut wealth inequality by as much as 20%. Bolsa Família has also significantly reduced child labor and improved educational outcomes for the poorest children. Studies suggest the program has helped lower rates of domestic violence, postpartum depression, suicide, and even tooth decay in children. Bolsa Família isn't just a cash transfer program. It's a successful attempt to wrestle with the legacy of social neglect. For many Brazilians, Bolsa Família is the most tangible example of the state acting on their behalf. It represents the very promise of citizenship. It directly attacks poverty in the present, enabling families to invest in their children's future. Lula left office in 2010 as one of the most popular leaders on earth, and by far the most popular in Brazilian history. Bolsa Família was a major reason for that. In fact, when a far-right extremist won the presidency in 2018, he sought ways to rebrand the program as his own. So while the United States sought to push people out of poverty by forcing them off welfare, socialists in Brazil did the exact opposite. They opened government support to more people. In the US, poverty went up. In Brazil under Lula, poverty shrunk, inequality fell, and the economy grew to 5 times the size than when Lula took office. Now, Brazil is still marked by serious inequality, but the Workers' Party showed that governments can act to dramatically reduce poverty. The first step is recognizing that poor people don't become less poor if their government calls them lazy or makes them take a drug test just to afford groceries. Enable families to meet their material needs, and they'll lead better lives.
22 months.
Lula
chat.
remains
Best
popular in
brain
Brazil
rotting
because
internet.
he acknowledged that everyone deserves a dignified life, regardless of their class or income. And as we confront the rot that prosperous elites in this country have allowed to fester for too long, we might learn something from the example of the Workers' Party in Brazil. I'm Andre Pagliarini, professor of history and Latin American studies at Dartmouth for the Gravel Institute.
I don't understand. Bootstrapping and austerity measures are not successful, and that poverty eradication programs are both politically sound
I've been working out from hearing from
because they're
friends, and at
popular,
HasanAbi, I was determined to get back into shape,
and
and I've
also
lost
good
20
policy
pounds
in
about
general
6
because it
months
does
of
end up
karate
eradicating
and
poverty.
gym
Shut
for
the
3
fuck
months
up!
to figure out.
Ah! No one cares about your fucking long ass dono! Fuck, dude.
Love you.
That's good. Concise. Okay? Stop writing fucking essays. Holy shit. Thank you, Passenger Shaming, for the 5 get the subs.
Thanks for saving me from right-wing pipeline all that time ago.
Good job, Ragnarok, for losing 20 pounds in about 6 months. Okay? That's what he was writing. He was writing an essay about how he lost weight. I'm proud of you. But goddamn, man. You don't have to always write an essay, man. That was my dono, you son of a bitch. I've been sub for 55 years, and that was the last time you'll ever disrespect me. Never coming back. $2.50 sub. Ironically, a tier 3. All right. Ukraine takes key hub from Putin's forces. It's time to once again talk about Pooty Poo. It also ties back to Elon Musk and how angry people are at Elon Musk for a spicy facility take. 34 J6 defendants have signed a letter complaining about conditions in the D.C. jail and are requesting they be transferred to Guantanamo Bay. That's pretty funny.